The DJI Osmo Action was first released in 2019. Now that seems like an awful long time ago, and think about how many other action cameras have been released since then. So I think we can all agree that it's about time that DJI upgrades the Osmo Action. In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the features I would love to see in the Action 2. Hey everyone, I'm Dave and thanks for joining me. Before we get started on this video, I gotta say, I don't have any insider information about a new camera. I don't have any leaked photos for anybody. I don't have any leaked information. I know nothing. I just love this camera and I, like you, want to see an update to this little action camera. So that's what this video is all about. Sure, there are leaks online, there are photos, there are sketches, everything. Personally, I don't believe anything until I see it released from DJI, or maybe a week in advance. Sometimes you see those things really come out and you really see the specs. So maybe they're true, maybe those leaks are true, and great. Good for those people finding out those leaks, but for me, I'm kind of skeptical and I just hold off and all that stuff. Okay, so let's get started and take a look at some of the things I personally would like to see improved on this little camera. The first thing, and probably the most important thing to me, is image quality. So I would love this little camera to have a larger sensor. Now, that's not an easy thing really, because look how tiny this camera is, and I love the form factor of this camera. I think it's great. It works really, really well, but a larger sensor would be really, really good. One of the biggest drawbacks with the Osmo Action, and actually a lot of these action cameras, is the low light capability. Now that's kind of understandable because not a lot of people are going to use an action camera indoors. For the most part, I would say maybe 99% of the time, I'm using this thing outdoors, under full sun or overcast skies, and it gives you great results in those situations. But when you come inside, the low light capability is not great. So a larger sensor would also, in theory, give you better quality of your footage when you're shooting outdoors. Now, I'm no engineer. I have no idea how they would make a larger sensor and keep the size like this. Personally, I love using the Pocket 2. In that camera, it essentially is the same size as the original Osmo Pocket, but yet they did increase the sensor size. So if they can do something very similar with this, increase the sensor size but don't change the size or the form factor, I think that would be the biggest thing I'm looking forward to in a new Osmo Action. Before I go any further, if these videos are something that you enjoy and is right up your alley, please consider subscribing. If this video is not one that you like, maybe one of my other ones is, and that would be great. I just have to say that I do actually use this camera all the time, especially lately. In the past year, I started a new YouTube channel all about camping in the great outdoors. And this thing is so valuable when you're shooting those kinds of footage. I mean, a lot of times if you're outdoors camping, it could be raining, you want to protect your camera, you don't want to get your other camera out and damage it, this thing really comes in handy. Now, when I'm shooting that, most of the time I'm shooting with my mirrorless camera. That's my main camera. But I also use this for other things, for on my bike, on my kayak, canoe, you name it. If I need to get those interesting shots, I'll use this. And when I'm shooting, I normally shoot in 4K at 24 frames if I'm walking and talking with the camera. If it's something that I want to slow down, I'll shoot in 60 frames and I'll slow it down in post. And I'm actually pretty happy that this little camera shoots 4K in 60. Of course, it would be even better if this shot 4K in 120 frames. That way you can slow it down even more. Of course, when you get to 120 frames on a lot of these cameras, you're starting to get a much bigger crop factor and you're losing that field of view kind of thing. So I would love for this to be exactly the same, 4K 60, but shoot 120 frames. Now, a lot of people would love it to shoot 5K or a little bit above that. But let's be honest here, I don't think that's going to happen in such a little camera. If we could just have a little bit improvement to go from 60 frames to 120 frames, that would make me a lot happy. And I think the footage would look really, really nice, especially when you shoot outdoors, especially when you're shooting action stuff, whether on the bike or the kayak, and you really want to slow that footage down to get a really unique look. Shooting at 120 frames at 4K, that would be another bonus for the new camera. When I am shooting with this thing outdoors, it always has a cage on it. I have the small rig cage for this, the second generation one, and it's awesome. I have another video on that. You can take a look at that if you want. But it's been so valuable to me to have a little cage on this camera. The fact that it's so tiny, it's kind of delicate. It has the screens in there. You don't want to break anything. So I have that cage on there all the time, and I think it works really, really well. My cage is the second generation of the cage, which is important because the original cage from Small Rig did not fit the proper audio adapter. So you couldn't connect the mic to it while you had the cage on. For me, that works great. I can have the cage on, I can have the audio adapter on, and have my shotgun mic. The cage actually has a cold shoe for the mic, which is great. I love that idea. However, if they can somehow figure out to put a mic jack on this bad boy, that would be awesome. I'm not 100% sure how you would do that, but you know what? Engineers are smart. They're a lot smarter than me. I'm sure they can figure out something. Now, if you put that on, would it lose your waterproof capabilities? Yeah, probably. But when you have the audio adapter, I don't think you should be putting that in water anyways. You're gonna have some problems if you did that. So a mic jack with some kind of plug to make sure it doesn't take on any water, that would be great. And you wouldn't need a separate audio adapter. The audio adapter works fine. It's just kind of bulky. I mean, how many people have lost that little thing? Knock on wood, I haven't lost it yet, but I think it's coming. I'm gonna lose it at some point. So a mic jack on the camera itself would be great. Get on that, will ya? We can't talk about the Osmo Action without talking about the waterproofing. When I first bought this, part of it was, hey, this is great. It's waterproof. I can take it in the water. I can do a whole bunch of different things to get creative while shooting in the water. Whether I'm shooting in a lake or a river, waterfall, you name it, a pool. That was one of the great features that sold me on this, and I really was excited about that because I wanted a camera that I can take almost anywhere. And for the most part, it's done just that. I've taken it in lakes, I've taken it in rivers, waterfalls, in pools. Not a problem. However, I don't know if I've just been lucky. I don't know what it's been, but a lot of people have complained that they have gotten water inside their camera. And of course, once you get water inside your camera, chances are that's it. You're not going to be able to use it again. You can try to dry it out, but let's face it, that's a pain. And whether it's going to work properly again, it's a crapshoot. You have no idea. So for me, like I said, I haven't had any issues, and I don't have an external waterproof case for it. I've used it everywhere. I've used it in storms and everything. Not a problem. I think one of the issues is the actual rubber band around the battery. We all know that if you make sure you click in the battery so you don't see any orange on either side and there's nothing sticking out, protruding or anything, that you should be good, and the waterproofing, the seal should be good. I think after a while, changing the batteries so many times, the little rubber band around there weakens or loses some of its integrity, and it causes the camera to leak a little bit. Maybe it's not that, maybe it's something else. But for the new version of this, I think they really got to address this. If you're going to come out and say that this camera is waterproof, up to a certain level, whatever it is, 10 meters, whatever it is, that's great. But make sure that it's waterproof. So if I just dump this in the kayak to get some shots of fish or whatever underwater, I want to know that I'm confident that that camera is not going to be destroyed. Because sometimes when I'm out on a camping trip, I'm out for a couple days. So if I lose this camera within a day because it got water in it, I'm going to be pretty pissed. So I love the fact that it is waterproof, but for the next version of this camera, let's make sure if it is going to be waterproof that it works properly, and you're not going to have any issues, and you shouldn't really need to get an external waterproof case for this. Sure, there are cases out there and they work really well. But if you're going to get a camera that's supposed to be waterproof to a certain level, let's make it waterproof to that level. One of the things that really sold me on the Osmo Action was the dual screen. I love that they came out with that. And of course, all these other companies are copying that, which is fine. I do a lot of vlogging with this camera. It's not my favorite camera to vlog with. I actually love vlogging with the Pocket 2. It's one of my favorites. But sometimes I need to vlog with this camera, whether it's drizzling and I don't want to use my other cameras. And it works really well with that screen. It doesn't give you the perfect shot and the perfect composition, but you can just look at it and know that you're centered or you're looking good in the shot. Of course, you don't want to look at the screen because your eyes are off. You want to be looking at the lens. But just to have that reference is so helpful. And I use it in a lot of weird angles, so be able to see it back even if it's far away, that's great. However, one of the things with the screen I find is that the sensitivity of the screen sometimes is not great. It's not like a normal touch screen where you just touch it and you can pick things. You got to touch and swipe and move your fingers and all that. So that's fine. If it gets dirty or greasy, it's even worse. And when I'm outdoors, it does get dirty. But I have found that sometimes it's not as responsive as I wish it was, so maybe we can improve that screen. I still think it's a great feature to have, and I love having that touchscreen, but they just have to improve it just a little bit. One of the other features that really sold me on this camera was the voice command. I love the fact that you can control this camera with your voice. Now, I don't have a great voice, but for the most part, it does understand me and it does do what I asked it to do. However, I have found that there are times where it just doesn't want to listen to you. And it is beyond frustrating to have the camera set up a little bit farther away where you can't actually touch it or do anything with it because you're going to use the voice command. And of course, when the voice command doesn't work, that is unbelievably frustrating. Now, I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it's picking up wind when I'm outdoors and it can't hear me, but I have done tests indoors and sometimes it works fantastic. It picks me up every time. It does exactly what I want it to do, but then other times it just doesn't do anything. It just kind of ignores me like a lot of people do. It's kind of sad, right? So I think the next version of this, if they could just improve on that voice command, that voice prompts, you only have a couple options too. So if they can improve on the voice command, that would be awesome. So overall, I'm still pretty happy to use this camera. Again, I use it all the time. It saved my butt in a whole bunch of different situations, and I love that. Just recently, I was on a backpacking trip, and I was about 5K into the campsite where I had to walk back out the next day, and I just started to pour. But I still needed to shoot a bunch of footage about my trip out and then tearing down the tent and tearing down the camp. I didn't want to use my mirrorless because it's not waterproof. I didn't want to use the Osmo Pocket because it's not waterproof and it's a pretty delicate camera. But the Action camera is perfect for such a thing. I just set it up on a tripod and I was able to get the shots of me tearing down the camp. But more importantly, when I walked out and it was raining in the hiking trail and there's trees around, there's slippery rocks, all that stuff, I had no problem using this camera and was very confident this camera was going to give me some good footage. And you know what? It did. Maybe the quality isn't as great as my mirrorless or maybe even the Pocket 2, but it's pretty darn close. So I think this camera has saved my butt a bunch of times. So what about you? What are some of the big features you would like to see in the next version of this camera? Which, if it does come out, I think they're probably going to call it the Action 2. If you think about it, it was the Osmo Pocket. They named it the Pocket 2. They got rid of the Mini. They got rid of a bunch of the other names, and they just shortened the name. So if they do come out, maybe it will be called the Action 2. From some of the leaked photos that I have seen, they have showed that it could be a modular style, and that's fine. For me, I do like something simple. So if they're going to make something, another version of this, I just hope that it's simple to use, gives you great quality, and it's also fun to use. If it's not fun to use, then why bother? I have enough of those cameras and I don't need another camera that's frustrating to use. So again, I don't have any insider information. I'm just a fan of this camera and I would really like to see them update it. I think they are going to do it soon. At the time of this recording, we're getting closer to the Christmas season and the fall tech special season. So it wouldn't shock me if it came out later this fall, and it'd be great to get this for Christmas. Maybe Santa will bring me one of these. That would be fantastic. But for now, I'm still pretty happy with this. I'm still going to use it. I have a whole bunch of different ways to mount it, and it's been great. So thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see in the new Action camera.